Welcome to COSC 1301. As you can see, this is an introduction to databases and computer applications. The subject matter covered in this would be primitive databases, storing data in tables, database management system, data definition language, database advantages and disadvantages, and traditional cloud databases. That is, traditional and cloud databases. So, primitive databases, what are they? I'm sure you've seen them sometime or another in your lifetime. They are basically file cabinets, typically with four file drawers, and within each drawer there are files, and these files contain information about entities that you're concerned about. In this case, it appears to be a business, and if you look here, you'll see that each drawer has folders. Folders contain information about the particular company that you're doing business with. You want to find out how much business you've done with them. You want to find out information about certain personnel in the company, maybe their phone number, or you want to find out if you have specials that you want to send out to them and you need their address. All of this information would be found in the file folder. Now, modern database storage basically doesn't use anything like that. Computer databases are basically using computers to organize all that information. Computer databases are logical structures used to organize and store data for retrieval or evaluation. Now, data within the most common types of databases are stored in tables consisting of rows and columns. Now, you'll see here you've got the columns at the top, rows across. The columns of a table contain information or attributes about individual customer information such as a company name, first name, last name, and phone numbers. So as you can see here, the columns, basically the attributes would be, you've got an ID number for each company, the company names here, first name, last name, and the phone numbers. Then we've got a row information. And this row information is basically all attribute information about each one of the companies. So if Acme is a company, then all of the attributes up here are part of this. Basically, this is a row information. You've got the ID number, Acme, the name of the company, James, first name of the person you want to contact, Elder, the last, and the phone number. These are all part of a database table. You got columns and you got rows. Now, database management systems. Databases today use an application called a database management system, or DBMS, to control access to the database. Now, this is an example of a database management system. You see it here. Now, these are the users that would want to access the database over here. But as you can see, they cannot directly access the database. They have to go through the database management system. Now, typical database management systems, if you're looking at Oracle, you got IBM, SQL Server for Microsoft, MySQL, and so on and so forth. So the programmers over here, Java coders, C# coders, HTML, and ASP.NET coders, they want to interact with this database over here. They cannot do it directly. They have to go through the database management system. They send their queries to the database management system. The database management system sends that to the database. The database gets answers, sends it back to the database management system, and then it goes back to the originator of the request. Now, data in the database can then be easily accessed, managed, modified, updated, controlled, and organized using the database management system. So you don't get information. No one user can access the database directly. They have to go through the database management system. Now, data definition language, if you look at data definition language, or basically it's DDL, data description language, is a syntax for creating and modifying database objects such as tables, indices, and users. The job of the DDL is to provide an interface that allows a user to interact with the database. for data entry, for updates, and to retrieve information from the database. In other words, the last slide we showed users, programmers interacting with the database management system and the database itself. So the job of the DDL is to provide an interface that allows a user to interact with the database. And so what are those interfaces? Now you got the data definition. And you have to create, you have to modify, and you have to remove definitions of the data structure. Now, these operations change the properties that affect how the database will accept and store data. Now, this is more important in some types of databases than others. And then we have the update. With the database, even though you're going through the database management system, you still have to be able to have the ability to insert, modify, and delete data within the database. Now, these operations change the actual data that is being managed. And finally, you got retrieval. You provide access to the stored data. Data can be retrieved as is, or it can often be filtered or transformed to massage it into a more useful format. And databases, modern databases, basically understand this rich query language to achieve this. Now, databases, we've talked about primitive and we've talked about that computer. And there are advantages to, speaking of computer databases in this case, there are advantages and disadvantages to computer-based databases. The advantages are you have reduced database data redundancy to a great extent. In other words, you're not going to be repeating data in individual tables. There are many tables associated with the database, but you will not have redundant data associated with that because the data that you put into a table basically can be spread throughout the database. The database can control data inconsistencies to a great extent. The database facilitates sharing of the data. You share that information within it. It facilitates, that is, sharing of data. Database enforces standards. Now, let's look at the disadvantages. Security may be compromised without good control of the database. Integrity may be compromised without good control of the database. Extra hardware may be required, and performance overhead may be significant. So these are the disadvantages. The database basically has their advantages and disadvantages. Now, let's get to the final section of this, and that is traditional and cloud databases. Traditional databases provide greater control and potential performance advantages. Cloud database providers, these basically cloud databases are hosted and managed by a third-party provider on their services. And you have cloud service providers such as Amazon, Azure, IBM, and Google Clouds. Now, cloud databases and traditional databases differ primarily in their location and management. Traditional databases are located on servers that are on-premise. Cloud databases are on the internet. So traditional databases provide greater control and potential performance advantages because they're on-premise. Now, cloud databases offer benefits such as scalability, accessibility, and cost-effectiveness because they are on the cloud. The cloud providers, basically, you pay for what you want. If you don't want to use certain things, you don't have to use them. A cloud database, you don't need to have as many people as you might would. You don't have to have the equipment overhead that you would. All you need is basically a cloud database offers benefits like scalability, accessibility, and cost effectiveness. If you don't need something that the cloud provider provides, you don't use it and you don't pay for it. Accessibility, scalability, all of these things are part of a cloud database provider. And so that ends the lecture on this particular computers and databases. If you have any questions, please direct them to me and we will find an answer for you.